Welcome back to the channel. Here's another exciting video update on our Audi project. It's time to bid farewell to the temporary wheels and welcome the original ones back, spotting a fresh new look. In this update we're also embarking on some electrifying refurb work on the rusty and seized old rear brakes. We've replaced the rear discs and pads and we're powder coating the calipers in a prismatic powder that looks awesome. This project is really starting to come together and levelling up with every upgrade that we make. We've now got the temporary wheel off and you can see the rear brakes are in pretty poor condition. We've got new disc and pads to go on and the rear calipers are both getting refurbed as they're both seized on currently. We've got a nice fancy powder to do them in. It's metallic black with like a rainbow effect glitter in. So some people may say it's a bit girly, but I think it'll look nice. So let's get the calipers off and let's make a start on getting them looking nice and shiny. In progress tonight, we've got the backing plates wire brushed and satin blacked and we've got the new disc bolted up. We've got both sides done. So we've now got nice free moving discs. Bearings are in good condition as well. Calipers nice and clean now, they've been shot blasted. We've got one of them in the oven with its carrier that's been outgassed, and we're finished for tonight. So we'll have some more updates tomorrow and we'll get them powder coated, rebuilt and back on the car. So the calipers are media blasted first of all, and then they're put in the oven in what we call an outgassing cycle, where they go on 250 degrees for about 40 minutes, opens up the pores of the metal and allows all the impurities to come out. They then have to go in the oven again and get re-blasted, which cleans everything back off that's come out of the pores and gives you a nice clean casting to powder coat. It's then a case of masking up all the areas that have sliders and bleed screws and things where you don't want the powder to go, which you can see we're just getting it done now, blanking all your holes off with bolts and bleed screws where needed, and then it's a case of getting them in the oven and getting them back up to temperature. So they go in the oven for about an hour in total. It takes 25 to 35 minutes to heat the casting up to a temperature where you can then take them out of the oven and what you call hot shoot them with the powder. So you put the powder on while the caliper's hot, they then go back in the oven and you're looking about another 20 minutes, sometimes it's less depending on what powders you're using, but that's roughly the cycle times for getting the caliper done. The masking can be quite fiddly because you're obviously trying to mask the areas where you don't want the powder to go, but you don't want to see any edges that are not powder coated. So it's a pretty neat job you have to do, and use a blade and obviously trim them very finely around the lines, and that way when you put the caliper back together you'll have a nice looking finish. So these calipers have now been in the oven for approximately 35 minutes and that gets them up to the temperature for powder coating, which for this powder is 180 degrees. Our oven's a little bit out, so it's set at 200. We've tested it and it's about 20 degrees out, the temperature gauge on it, because we use household ovens to do the powder coating. Being an household oven size, obviously they're perfect for doing brake calipers. Anything bigger and you'd be wasting money on running costs of keeping the oven hot, because you tend to do one set of calipers at a time because people choose different colours. So it's not like you can batch them and do 4 or 5 sets in a larger oven. So right at the start when we started doing brake calipers we chose to use a household oven as they just seem to be the perfect size. So the camera doesn't pick up the prismatic very well in the black, but later on in the video you'll see that. Once they've been powder coated they go back in the oven for about 20 minutes, and then once they've cooled back off we move on to building them up. As you can see we've got new sliders, we're re-greasing everything, making sure everything's going to last. When we do these calipers for customers we give a 2-3 year warranty on them, so you need to make sure everything's right. The sliders get greased, and as you can see I'm turning them around and working them in just to make sure there's grease all around on the inside, because you want to keep those sliders free as possible. What happens over time on these types of calipers is if the caliper piston doesn't seize in the actual caliper housing, you'll tend to find that one of these pins will seize, top or bottom, and then you get your caliper trying to tilt an uneven wear and warm brake pads off at an angle. We don't want any of that, and obviously with this being a new setup everything's moving lovely and freely, and we'll need to get it back on the car. So once we've got the sliders built back up for the carrier, it's time to get the piston and the handbrake mechanism back in the rear caliper. Now these are very fiddly to do. You've got like a spring mounted circular cylinder with a thread on it which you wind the piston onto, and when the arm's on the back of that and you turn the handbrake arm, that's what makes the piston grip for the handbrake. There's a circlip deep in the caliper which is quite difficult to get on, and they're quite fiddly. And I've actually got a pair of right-angled circlip pliers which have got a really deep reach, which years ago I ground them down and modified them specifically to do the rear Volkswagen and Seat Group and Audi Group calipers, because we had a customer ask us to do a set. So we've had these for a while, and it does make the job a little bit easier, because obviously you probably need specialist tools if you're an actual caliper remanufacturer. But we have to make do with things we can buy and modify, because we don't have the ability to get those tools. But once you get the circlip in, it's then a case of greasing all the seals with the silicone grease. You then wind the piston onto the thread. You have to put the piston boot down to the bottom of the piston, get the lip in the caliper because it isn't held in with anything other than the actual piston itself. So you have to kind of put the edge of the seal into a recess, and then wind the piston in like you can see I'm doing, and you wind it all the way down until it hits the bottom, and then you've got the handbrake lever arm to put back on. So it's now time to get the caliper back on the car. We're just putting the carrier on, and the two bolts on the inside of the hub are a little bit awkward to get to. There's arms in the way and things, so we get them in as much as we can finger tight, and then we've got this nice big ratchet. New Mac one that I bought recently, which is very handy for jobs like this where you need to make sure that the caliper bolts are tight. Once we've got those tight, we're obviously going to get the caliper on and get the pads in, and then we'll have to get the caliper bled up and some new brake fluid in. So on the Project Audi we're using Juratech discs and pads, which are one of the cheaper brands but they're decent quality. We've been using them for a while now and we're quite happy with them. All the discs are coated as well, so you don't get heavy corrosion on them. These ones are coated silver over the whole disc, and obviously once you use them and bed them in, the pads clean the silver off the centre part of the disc where your pads are contacting, and then the rest of it's left in a nice silver finish, and you don't get the rust that you usually get. As you can see, we've got the caliper on now, the handbrake cable back in. Then it's just a case of getting the other side on, getting the brake lines attached, and then getting some fluid in and getting it all bled up. So we've got the wheels on. We've ordered new centre caps and new nut covers. Front calipers are going to get powder coated to match the rears, and as you can see, that is a huge improvement on what we had before. Got the freshly coated wheels, the freshly coated calipers, and the new disc and pads on the rear. And just to show you, you can see it's like a rainbow glitter in the black calipers, which looks really nice, possibly a bit girly, but Project Audi is now starting to take shape. Now I've had to order a set of rear springs for it because we found that on the left rear coil. So she'll have a new set of rear springs on as well. All the tyres are good. We'll get the front brakes done over the Christmas break, and then once the front brakes are done, she is ready to go for an MOT. We're also going to give her a good clean off underneath because she has spent some of her life on building sites, so it's quite dirty underneath. We'll get that a nice, give it a jet wash and clean it all off, and we're also going to give it a full service. And then it's just some finish off paintwork and maybe a nice new set of number plates. I mean, look at that rainbow sparkle, the prismatic powder on those calipers. They have come out absolutely amazing. It's really starting to take shape now, this project. We obviously need to get the front brakes done to match, but the wheels, we've now got the centre caps in as well. The wheels look absolutely awesome. The brakes look great behind the wheels. It's really starting to clean the car up. Even just with the wheels on before we put the centre caps in and that, it's still starting to look like a really nice motor again. It's something that once finished we're going to put up for sale, so it is going to be available. We're not sure on the price yet. We'll wait to see what the MOT brings up, and it'll be fully serviced. and everything will be ready on it. It'll be a really good, clean, solid car. All the work that's required to be done will be done on it, and it'll be ready to drive.